Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Wednesday, March 28th. For me in the USA, but for my guest, it is Wednesday, March 29th at approximate, did I get that
Thursday?
right?
Thursday.
It's Thursday.
For me, yes.
Oh my goodness.
The future.
Okay, we're two different time zones, two different continents for sure. See, and I am as they say, time zone challenge, so I do apologize. So it is Thursday, March 30th for you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in any event, I want to welcome everybody today. I am so excited to be here with my guests, and let me just say that this is the story that I wish I could have read way back when. Without further ado, welcome to the Stories That Inspire Us, the author series. My name is Janice Melillo, your host. And today I am here with an amazing author who really shares her journey, obviously from a very personal, a very raw and authentic place. Welcome to the podcast, Suzanne Culberg.
Thank you so much for having me, Janice. I'm looking forward to this.
Oh, wonderful. Me too. Obviously, when I first started reading your book, I would say for me personally, it hit a couple nerves, but only not to what you were writing about and sharing your weight loss journey. And by the way, the name of your book is, and I just had it right in front of me. And as I was switching stuff around, I switched my paper around. So I do apologize. So just bear with me a moment here. But your book, really from a very personal standpoint, is a very unapologetic weight loss memoir. And the name of her book is Everything is Shit. And
the beginning is shit.
Beginning is shit. An unapologetic weight loss memoir. Wow. When you set out to first write your book, imagine you perhaps at your computer or maybe journaling out how you were going to really map out writing this book. What were some things that first came to your mind about your perception of you writing your memoir?
Nobody's asked me that question, so that's a great one. The very first thing that came to my mind is, with any memoir, autobiography, something that is written from the person's point of view. So how people would be portrayed. And this is something that comes to my mind a lot. Like, my children and I are currently watching Survivor, so like reality TV, don't judge us, but even reality TV is through the lens of the producers, the filmers. Like, you were given a story from a point of view. So it was never my intention, and I said that in the very beginning, to portray anybody in a particular way. And it was, and the other thing that really, when I really sat down to write it, was I'd read a lot of memoirs, and some of them are written retrospectively. And I didn't like that style as much, because I found that I was taken out of the story a lot. Because, what I mean by that is, you'd read it a bit and then go, little did I know, or, and this turned out to be the best thing that happened. And I deliberately shied away from that style because I wanted to write it as in it was happening. So I had to reconnect with younger versions of myself who didn't know any better, or who interpreted behavior in a way that when I got older, I was like, okay, I can see why that was in my best interest, or I can see why somebody might have thought that, but that wasn't open to me at such a young age. So, and I remember one of my clients, one of my very first readers, said to me, after I wrote it and she read it, she's like, there's a villain in every story, but that doesn't make them a villain. Like, because as in, you might be the villain in my story, but you're not a villain. That's the way that you're cast. And it's something I'm mindful of in anything that I consume, read, watch now, that, without, protagonist, without a villain, without a person to put the things on, the story isn't as entertaining, should I say, a read or a watch. Like, you watch some reality shows, this is really boring because there's no drama. And then it's like, where have we become that we need to be entertained? But yeah, it was something that I was really mindful of, that, people would be cast in certain lights, but that is how I felt at the time. But that isn't the whole totality of who the people were. And that's why I deliberately chose to change everybody's name, except for my husband and my children. So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for describing that, because when I did start to read it, I felt as though that was really obviously very important to you on how you wrote it, because you got to see the progression of your journey from a very, very sensitive time in your life, as a young girl starting, at age 4, when, and then your sister's wedding, and, all these things are happening to you. And the detail was, I felt as though I was watching a video. Like, I am seeing this in real life. I'm picturing it as it's happening. And is this, by the way, your very first book that you've written?
My first book, yes.
Because I really didn't know that from as the reader, that this was your first book that you've ever written, because it was written extremely well. And I feel like you captured your story in such a way where you honored your journey along the way. And that must have been, I think, at times perhaps overwhelming.
It was like cutting open my emotional wounds and watching them bleed. It was very, very challenging to write.
And as I had mentioned before we began our conversation, and of course butchered the name of your book, and
so good.
Of course, well, you know what? Maybe I need another cup of coffee, but I gave that up for Lent. But in any event, the beginning is shit. And I knew this was going to be one of those books that would kind of tug at the heartstrings. When I read in your prologue, and I kind of mentioned or did a verbatim basis from my point of view, but you actually say, this is the story I have always wanted to read. That's pretty powerful.
Thank you. I find most before and after stories, which is another thing that I was obsessed with, gloss over the messy middle, hence the title of my next book that I've yet to write, but I'm planning it in my head. But we tend to have the person really aptly describe their life before, skip over the journey, and then really aptly describe their life after. And I find that I'm always left a little bit disappointed, or a little bit, well, where am I going wrong? Because I was there and I'm certainly not here. So, there tends to be this before and after, kind of like Disney princess tale. And it's like, but how did you get to where you are? So my next iteration, my next memoir, like, people laugh, like, how can you write more than one memoir? I'm like, I've got 3 in me at least. Weight, business, parenting. The 3 big things. Because I think, so many of us, although we may enjoy the story or feel inspired or feel like we're not alone, we're left hanging for like, how, like, I really relate to this before, I haven't yet got to this after. What's fundamentally wrong with me that, they did it in this shorter period of time, or they only had one little speed bump or whatever? Like, what? Surely has anyone else gone up and down and up and down and up and down? And I was like, maybe, and that's why, you know, with my weight journey, particular, also with business, like you see, you know, I found this course or this coach and I did this program and I was suddenly 6 figures and beyond. And I was like, that certainly hasn't been my experience. So I think, you know, writing to the grit that it takes to hang out in there, in the messy middle, and in the times where you're not sure that it's going to, you know, all work out. I took my kids just over the weekend gone to the theatre to see Joseph and his Technicolor Dreamcoat, and they hadn't seen the story before, and they loved the part. For anyone listening who hasn't seen it, he gets sold into slavery, and then he gets sold out for something he didn't do and ends up in prison. And they're singing the song to him. They're like, we've read the book and you come out on top. And my kids, like, they love that part. They're like, imagine if somebody was in our life saying, you know, hold on, stay in there. Mm-hmm. We've seen this, you've got it. And I think that's something, you know, we could all have in the back of our mind, our little person saying, you know, you've got this, you'll come out on top, just hang on. Yeah.
And, you know, hanging on, especially when you're writing on a sensitive subject, you know, I look back at my weight loss journey, and although I was not a heavy child, on the Wisdom audio app. Suzanne, can you still hear me?
Yep, it froze for a sec. It might just be the Australian internet. But okay. Oh no, you're back.
Yeah,
we don't have the best internet in Australia.
This is the beauty of live podcasting. Butcher the date, the guest, name of the book, and then, you know, everything else happens. But, and, you know, kidding aside though for a moment, anyone's weight loss journey, especially for a woman, is very, very sensitive. And I go back to my journey, and you had written in a couple different places within your book, like where you were at this time as far as your weight, and you did it in kilograms. So I went on because, you know, I was curious. I wanted to really, obviously relating to my personal weight loss journey, I really wanted to know where your head was at with that. And I don't think it was so much your weight, in this coming from, again, from my personal experience, but I think more it was our perception of who we are as a person that waited on us. And just by the way, I used to weigh more than that. And we're not going to get into numbers here. Of course, when our viewers and listeners go to, of course, read the book, they can figure that out from themselves. But I really wanted to share that with you. When you are coaching your clients, and obviously we know that you work with women, what do you think is one thing that stands out to you that's common with all your clients, other than being, of course, sensitive about what they weigh?
That there's an expectation, often unstated, that once they reach their goal weight or size, they will be happy and confident. We've tied self-worth with weight, and I think that's the biggest thing that I work through with people. That currently, at this moment in time, I've injured my knee, which is frustrating as get out. Mm-hmm. And I was just journaling about this yesterday, and I was like, I don't even weigh myself now. I've got no idea what I weigh. I haven't weighed myself in years. It's an obsession that I no longer subscribe to. I know I'm carrying some more kilos since COVID. I can feel it in my clothes, but, you know, it's like, it's not the weight that determines me. Like, it's a strong body or a healthy body or a body that, you know, can sleep without pain or walk without pain. And it's the things that you don't appreciate that you have until they're gone. And with this knee rehabilitation, it's a process and it's painful. And it's like, you know, it wouldn't have mattered about dropping a few kilos. It would be nice, like, you know, to fit back into some clothes that no longer fit or whatever, but I can always go and buy more clothes. I can't go get another body that doesn't hurt. And I think for many people who have tied their weight to their self-worth, then drop the weight and then realize I'm not magically more happy or confident. I'm just me who takes up physically less space. That's when the real work begins.
That is so true, because in chapter 3 on page 24, you were chatting about that very same thing that you were just relating to us. If I can just get to blank, then I'll be happy. That self connecting our self-worth with our weight.
Yeah, or an achievement. So it might not be weight. It could be something else for anyone listening. It could be a goal, like a job, a raise, a promotion, a number of clients, a fully booked out practice. I have 2 children currently. Well, that's all I'll have. But my daughter wanted to get onto the debate team, and it was a whole process. And I was like, the fact that you had to go, you got up in front of the whole school, you did a speech, you created the speech, well, a debate. You did the rebuttal, like you put yourself in a really uncomfortable situation. That should be celebrated. Whether or not you make the team is just secondary. And I think so often we put so much effort in to reach a goal, and we're talking about weight loss for this audio, and you're like, I cooked the food, I got up early, I joined the gym, I went, I drank the water, I gave up the coffee and the alcohol, I did all of these things, and then we throw it all out for naught because an inanimate object tells us that the number isn't sufficient. And I think, you know, when we look at the totality of our journey and what are we actually doing it for, we dismiss it. And then if we're doing all these things that we really don't like, especially when it comes to exercise, and I think that's the biggest thing I've learned over my entire journey, if you don't like it, don't do it. And so many people will tell you, like, to this day, people say that you can't lose weight without running, or you can't whatever. And I just laugh now. I just laugh so hard. And I'm like, it's funny how people have an opinion about something that they've never experienced, because I released over half my body weight with walking and yoga, pretty much.
Well, and to your point there, you're absolutely correct. But I think in some people's mind, like I know when I started my weight loss journey, I fell in love with going to the gym, and, you know, people thought, you know, once I started losing the weight that I was obsessed, and perhaps that is true to a certain point. But for me, it made me feel good that I was doing it for me. But I think too much emphasis can be put on, oh my God, I have to get to the gym. I have to do this. I have to do that. When in actuality, you know, walking, I love walking. I happen to do typically two 45-minute workouts a day. For me, I love that. I don't go crazy going to the gym. You know, I talk about kickboxing all the time. That's what I love. You have to find something that works for you, whatever that is. But going back to, you know, I think we put too much stress on, well, I need to get my fat little derriere over to the gym. Like, and that's such negative talk.
And it's not really motivating. Like, people think, oh, I just need to be motivated. I think that word should be like removed from the dictionary. But they've literally done studies on, you know, the away from motivation, like, you know, get my fat bottom to the gym or whatever. It might be enough to get you to sign up. It might be enough to get you to go for a week, but it doesn't bring the momentum that you need. Like, most people, the transformation comes from what you do consistently and persistently. And we tend to do this start, stop, black and white, all or nothing, diet binge, on and off. And that's actually worse than just making the small change that, okay, yes, I've got this, and adding in the next thing. Yes, I've got this, and adding in the next thing. Because the other thing we do when we do go extremes is often injury, like physical injury. I spoke about that in the book. And then that can put us out for months, if not longer. And it's like meeting our body where it's at and enjoying what we do and having it feel good. Because if it feels good, you're much more likely to keep doing it than if it really hurts and you have to like summon every bit of go you have to get out of bed and force yourself to do it.
That is so true. And, you know, the injuries are like, we have to really, you know, those conversations that we have with ourselves. And when you have an injury, it's tough when you're not able to do what you love to do. You know, obviously you were describing your knee injury, and, you know, speaking from personal experience, you know, when I knew that something was wrong with my foot one day when I kicked the bag, but I did not listen to what my body was telling me. So I did kickboxing the next day, and I'm like, oh, you know, my foot is a little tender, whack the bag. And then later that night, well, all bets were off, and I knew that I probably had broke my foot. Like that happened, I want to say about 4 years ago or so. But it's really important to kind of take a step back. Now, for instance, when you go to the gym, like when I first started going to the gym, of course your muscles are going to be very sore. That is going to happen. But it's really about looking at exercise, or I often refer to it as movement, because I don't like the word diet. I don't like the word exercise.
Word allergies, they're totally a thing.
Oh, I love that. I have to steal that from you. Word allergies. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'm allergic to diet. I'm allergic to exercise. I'm allergic to weight loss. I'm allergic to gratitude. And people often raise an eyebrow at me when I say that. But when I was a child, you should be grateful there's starving children overseas. Never. So every time I hear that, I'm like, it makes me feel guilt and shame. And there's a lot of heaviness associated with it. And if you do have a word allergy, you can do a lot of work to undo it. Like, you know, there's processes and tools, or you can just change the word. So I appreciate, same thing, but there's no heaviness associated with it. So I have an appreciation practice, which is the same thing as a gratitude practice, but doesn't link to any guilt and shame for me.
And, you know, thank you so much for sharing that, because I think that you really bring up another valid point when we talk to ourselves, like, when you were saying, if I can get to blank, I'll be happy. And if we are not happy with where we are, or the food allergies that we are insinuating on ourselves, that is hard to have gratitude. So thank you.
Yes. So as soon as you catch that, for anyone listening, if you catch, I'll be happy when, because it still happens to me right now, I'll be happy when this many people join my program or whatever. It's like, if you catch it, it's like, okay, pause, pen and paper, notes on your phone, whatever, 5 things that you appreciate right now about that very thing. So what do you appreciate about your body? Like, I appreciate that no matter what I feed it, my body keeps going. I appreciate that, you know, it's carried 2 beautiful children. I appreciate that it, you know, takes me from A to B. Like, whatever the thing is that you've caught yourself in, like, I'll be happy when, because I think when we look at the gap, we just stretch it further and further and further. Because what happens is, if you're not in appreciation for where you are, you're not going to appreciate when you get there. It's going to be, it needs to be more weight, or I need to be toned, or it needs to be more money, or it needs to be something else. I remember reading the book Happy Money by, I think it's Ken Honda. I haven't finished the book, but very early in it, like, I swear this book changed my life, because he was talking about interviewing people and how much money is enough to make you happy. Because after weight, then my next big frontier was money, you know, just the pillars. And he said he decided to go to a private airstrip, because he's like, people who own private jets, they must be happy. Because, like, how much money does it take to own a private jet? Like, we're not talking about the environmental impact, but just, you know, the money. And so he goes down there and he sees this first person to interview, or asked to interview. And he's like, well, we see all the jets there. Mine is the smallest. He's like, I've got the smallest jet and the smallest hangar. So when I have a bigger jet, and I was like, it never ends. Like, in that moment, it was like this watershed moment for me. I was like, it never ends. So if you can't appreciate the body that you have now, or the amount of money you have now, or the job you have now, I'm not saying you have to love it and want to stay there forever and whatever, or the car that you have now, then the next one isn't ever going to give you the missing piece, because there'll always be bigger, faster, better, smoother, something like that. So yeah, catch yourself, notice it. Oh, hello, brain. Thanks for offering me that. What is awesome about where I am already?
Wow. When you joined your weight loss program, and you mentioned something, and I know that this was something that I said to myself, my urge to quit before I even started. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can relate to this, because that's hard.
It is. And that's the thing, if you feel heavy, if you feel leaden, if you feel pressure before you even begin something, it's a moment to question, is this the thing? Like, do you really want this? Because sometimes, we join a weight loss program, we're already dreaming of the burger or the chips or the chocolate we're going to eat afterwards. We're like, for this 6 weeks or 8 weeks or 12 weeks or however long it is, I'm going to stick to this to the letter. But then and then we've set ourselves up for a black and white, or all or nothing, or on or off. There is no wagon. So I'm not saying don't do a program or a course. I'm not saying you have to be like, yay, this is the best thing about every single thing. Like, there's going to be times, as you said, when you go to the gym, if you haven't been in a long time, or if you're rehabbing an injury, there is going to be discomfort, but there is a level of difference between discomfort and pain. I'm all for discomfort. Like, I make myself uncomfortable all the time. I'm a highly sensitive introvert. Doing interviews is really uncomfortable for me, but I'm not in pain. So, and knowing for yourself, is this a challenge where I'm willing to be uncomfortable, to put myself out there, or to put my body into something that it hasn't done in a long time, if ever, versus this is really painful and I'm already like imagining not doing it, then that's not going to stretch and grow and get the result that you're hoping for.
That is so true, because, we stretch our muscles, right? Hopefully, for those who work out or exercise or do your movement routines, you do the proper warm up and the proper cool down. And I think we need to kind of really relate that to what we are going through. Are we setting ourselves up for success when we decide to do a weight loss program or whatever it may be? And are we that type of a person that where we are all or nothing? And how is that going to start off whatever it is that we are striving to get, if we don't kind of take a step back for a moment and really look at, am I really setting myself up for success, or am I already, before I've begun, set myself up for failure?
And what are we measuring against? Like, what is our standard? So one of my big pet peeves with a lot of businesses in general, particularly weight loss businesses, is they will promote their program with a before and after poster, story, picture, whatever, with a tiny little asterisk, and you need like a magnifying glass to read results not typical. And then we go into this having looked at the poster, having read the story. If the results aren't typical, why are you using it to promote your product? It's one of my biggest pet peeves. So if you do go and look at my website and my programs and things, this is the first year I've ever used testimonials at all. Not that I didn't have them. Like, people said in the past, oh, you need social proof, you need this. I never led with them because I didn't want anybody to join thinking I'm going to get this. But I have everyday stories from everyday people who have done the program, the typical experience that they've had. And I've asked those people to share, not the this is the most amazing thing. And everything is amazing. Everyone is amazing. Everything that you've done is amazing. And when we're like the 1% or whatever, and that's all that we lead with. And then the other thing too about those results, I'm still on a website for one of the middle part of my book. If you read that particular weight loss journey, I say weight loss because I gained all that back with interest. The absolute walk of shame or asking or ringing the place to say, can you please take that down because I'm now bigger than ever. And some of them won't. And it's like, you're using something that lasted 6 months or less to still promote and sell your product. And yeah, and then, that's another thing I talk about in my book. It became geographically unsustainable to do some of these things because I was so embarrassed to go back. Here I am outside on the poster. And now it's like, is that you? It's like, yes, it is. And I think there's something unhealthy, like, about the mindset of promoting, like, people said to me, you've made us thousands of dollars. And people buying something that was unrealistic, it made me uncomfortable.
And, you bring up a very valid point there. And I think obviously with the weight loss industry in general, that's billions and billions of dollars per year.
$800 billion industry.
I mean, that is quite staggering.
And also too, one thing I didn't even say at all, Janice, is did the person in the poster even do that program? Because like, I don't have any of my pictures up anymore. I've taken a lot of them down, but people would take them and then use them to sell the thing. And people would ring me and go, have you done this? I was like, no. So you don't even know if the story or the poster is attached to the person who did the program because of the wonders of the internet. And now with AI and stuff, you just, take someone's pictures and claim for this thing. So like, can you speak to anyone who's actually done this program and of their experience, not just see a picture or read a story that may or may not even be true?
That point well taken, as I'm sure, in your case that your photo showed up, like, and somebody called you, and that's kind of a sneaky way to get a sale. Like, why not, if you are quote unquote selling something, do it from the heart, do it from the soul, and share what you're passionate about, but do it in a very ethical way. So
and also with any program too is another thing. So I mentioned slightly in the book getting fired. It ended up being one sentence, but that was because of a conflict of interest. I'd done an interview, so I did lots of things. I work with lots of coaches and trainers and programs. I'm always happy to give a testimonial, to do a video, to do a story. But one of the things now that I insist on is this is one of the programs I've done, or you're one of the coaches I've worked with. And if they refuse to run that, then I refuse to do the interview, because they love to lead with, Suzanne Culberg did this and released X number of whatever. And I'm like, if you won't then say as part of her journey or as one of the things, because everyone loves to claim the success. And then the person buying it thinks all I need to do is this, like to make a successful 6-figure business or to release X number of kilos or to whatever. And it's like, we are a totality. We don't do any one thing. And I think when people love to claim the credit. And I think that's for anybody who's listening, when you're going about something and you're releasing weight or building money or doing something, we tend to give our power away. It was this program, it was this coach, it was this, but then we sure as earth take it back when we start to backslide. So like the person, the program, the coach lost the weight, made the money or whatever, and then I'm the failure who can't keep it together. And then we take all of that back. And it's like, no, both of those are ours. We are, responsible and empowered in releasing weight or making money or whatever. And we are responsible and empowered, when our winter comes. Everything's seasonal. Life isn't linear. So sometimes we have a season of, stepping back or things not going so well, taking it back to the Joseph musical, but, you're going to end up on top. So remembering not giving your power away to somebody else, I think that's been a real game changer for me, at least.
I can certainly see that, because really your story, I mean, I could be chatting about your book for hours, quite frankly, But with that being said, there's so many parts of it that, you know, where you didn't give up. And that is to be celebrated. I mean, going through med school and then everything that transpired to where you are today has led you to write this amazing book.
Yes, we didn't even touch on that. But some people could see that as a failure. To this day, my parents still see that as a failure. And I was like, no, that was my biggest success. I think sometimes stepping back from something that isn't aligned for you and, you know, overcoming your people-pleasing nature of doing something for someone else and really realizing, actually, I don't enjoy this. This doesn't light me up. This isn't the way that I want to go. You know, despite the label of, you know, doctor or, you know, the social cred that comes with it, to be like, actually, this isn't for me, is much more empowering in the long run.
And I saw that in the depth of your book. I really did. And I was fascinated by your whole book, of course. What would you say when you wrote your book? It goes, obviously, it's published. The first time that you held that book, your book, in your hands, what did that feel like?
Oh, I did a Facebook Live about it. I can still remember it. For me, it's interesting. I was talking about this in my program the other day, about, you know, self-concept. You get to choose. For some people, they're not an author unless they're traditionally published. For some people, they're not an author unless they're a New York Times bestseller. For some people, they're not an author unless they have a body of work and they put out a book a year or whatever. I was like, no, for me, I was an author the day the proof arrived and I picked it up and I just flipped it. I've literally got it. I keep it on my desk because for me, it's one of my biggest achievements. I love everything about it, the color, the cover. And it was just that feeling. And I've got a video of me doing it. I can still remember doing it. And it was funny. One of my clients watched the video and she's like, how did it smell? I was like, oh, I didn't even think, you know, the new book smell. But holding that, I was like, and I remember my kids, they were in the background. And I was talking to them afterwards and they're like, it's kind of thin. Like, how did you fit all those years? I was like, honey, if I'd written the entire, it would be like a tome. But that part is the achievement. And I think for any goal that you're setting, there is the traditional achievement. Like for my parents, going to medical school would have been when I did the Hippocratic Oath or something like that. But it was like getting in, and then realizing this isn't for me. And so many of us, we can get ourselves stuck. We're like, when I first wrote the book, I actually wrote it back in 2018. I parked it for 3 years because I got to the part where I got fired. And at that time, it had just happened and it was going to be a whole chapter. When you were talking about mapping the book, it was an entire chapter. It didn't feel right. And I was like, oh, this isn't a priority right now. And my husband had his third redundancy at the time. So it was like, now you're the breadwinner. Writing a book didn't seem to be, like, a book is mostly a labor of love. Maybe if I was a bestseller or something, it'd be different. But it wasn't the right time to finish it. But knowing yourself, when is it time to park something or when is it time to retire something, rather than keeping going for an external pressure, I think that's one of the biggest achievements we can have in life.
Oh my gosh, absolutely so. Oh my gosh. I just want to segue over for a moment to welcome all of our amazing live listeners currently on. I see some familiar names, so thank you all so much for being here. Wow. What would you say is, other than you mentioned that you have 2 more books in you, but what is like one big goal specifically for you and for your business that you're like, okay, I might need to shelve that one for a while, but you know what? It's going to remain there. And that's something I want to achieve.
That's such a great question. Currently, I must admit, my youngest son, I've spoken about this in socials and stuff, has recently been diagnosed on the spectrum. So a lot of my focus has been in, you know, helping him learn to read, tie shoes, do things that every day, I haven't realized how much I've taken my life for granted until I've been gifted to mother somebody who things don't come easy to. So it's been a really big focus of priority. And the other day, he can read, and he was reading something to me. I was just sitting there crying with absolute happiness, because reading is my absolute pleasure. To this day, I still read at least one book a week, if not more. And it was just so monumental that something that I took for granted and that was easy for me to learn has been years in the making. And, you know, his life's different. And I think, you know, to that end, like one of my passions before, it would have been a goal, an amount of money, or, you know, an amount of followers or any, but these are all vanity stats. Like what I really like, what my life's passion is to appreciate what I already have and help others appreciate what they already have too, because I don't believe we can achieve anything the next level unless we really take stock of where we are. And, you know, just the little things that remind me of that. Currently housing an injury that is, you know, frustrating me no end. You know, helping my son who is struggling with things that, you know, in the beginning, I'll be honest, it really frustrated me. I was like, why can't you just get this? But to be like, how much of a gift this is, and the support that we have available to us, like, you know, where I live in Sydney, Australia. Everything's really close, and the team, like, he got embarrassed. He's like, why do I need all this help? My sister doesn't need it. And I was like, but this is amazing. Speech therapy, occupational therapy, psychotherapy, that all this is available to us, like, you know. And I think when I look to the big things, like, you know, I want this many dollars, or I want, you know, this kind of house or something, I can find my mindset slipping back into the book, you know, into the time where it's like, when I have this, then I'll be a real business owner, or then I'll be this. And it's just kind of like really taking stock of what I already have, and knowing that the next thing is just going to work itself out. So there'll be at least 2 more books. My program, I absolutely love the program I run called Why Wait. And, you know, being able to spend time with my children, like they have school events coming up. The school never gives us much notice, but I love being able to just say to my group, kids' sports carnival's on, rearranging this call. And in the past, you know, overcoming the conditioning that that's selfish, or that's, you know, unprofessional, whatever. It's like, no, I'm very upfront at everything, that I build my business around the life, like the true lifestyle business, rather than telling my kids, oh, because that's one of my biggest wounds growing up, was that, you know, I appreciate my parents. They had to work. They didn't have any choice, but not being able to enjoy the things with me. That's what I really love in life, being able to go to the cross country and cheer and embarrass my kids and those kinds of things.
Oh, wow. That is so amazing. You know, your book is, I can't wait for your next 2 books to come out. So you'll definitely have to keep me posted on that. Before we do our sign off, how can our viewers and listeners connect with you further?
Best place to find me is my website. It's suzanneculberg.com, SuzanneCulberg. If you want to find my book too, there's a link to it on my website, or Google or go to Amazon or wherever you buy your books from and put Suzanne Culberg in. Word to the wise, if any of your listeners are aspiring authors, if you put a swear word in the title of your book and you try to be smart about it by putting an asterisk or some other kind of character, it makes your book really hard to search for. Like, unless you get the character in the space exactly right, people will not be able to find it by the title. So then they're going to have to search by author name. And if you have a name like Culberg or something that's unusual spelling, you become difficult to find. So that's something to be mindful of. So yeah, my website, it has, you said, I loved how you said you didn't think it was my first book. I've been writing a newsletter, a weekly newsletter for years. I love to write. You can get access to that from my website. It's so funny. It's called newsletter. And speaking of marketing, whatever, people's like, that's not sexy. You need to give a bonus, or you need to have a freebie. And I'm like, I'm direct. I write a newsletter. It's pretty awesome. I don't share it anywhere else. So I highly encourage you to sign up for it.
Oh my gosh, that is wonderful. And of course, I will make sure that all of your information is in the show notes. But just out of curiosity, if you were to give your newsletter a very specific name, what would you call it?
what would I call it? I was going to say something like swings and roundabouts or whatever, because it's like it's uncut or it's behind the scenes. It's not the polished, pretty thing that most people expect. And I love talking to people through my newsletter. So if people respond to that, then I'll respond and we have some really deep conversations. But I'll often be talking about, you know, the realness of life. So, you know, not the highlight reel.
Wow, that is so amazing. I can't thank you enough for being here today and sharing a very small glimpse of your book, but a very huge glimpse into your life and your story. I hope you will definitely consider coming back soon.
I'd love to.
Oh, that would be so awesome. Thank you from the bottom of my heart, because these truly are the types of stories that inspire us. My name is Janice Malillo, the host of Stories That Inspire Us. Today on the author series, really so inspired by my amazing guest, Suzanne Culberg. Thank you all so much. Thank you again, Suzanne, and we shall see you all. You're welcome. Very soon. Bye for now.